I never thought I'd be the guy writing about how my marriage fell apart because my wife, Lisa, decided to cheat on me with our financial advisor of all people. We'd been together for almost 10 years, and honestly, I thought we had a good thing going, sure, the usual ups and downs, but I never suspected she'd do something so cold and calculated. We had our problems, sure, but I always believed we were solid enough to weather anything. That is, until I started noticing little things that didn't sit right. It all began a few months ago when I started reviewing our bank statements and investment reports. Lisa always handled the bills, and I trusted her completely. But suddenly, I noticed some unusual charges on our credit card, consultation fees from our financial advisor, Mark, that were way higher than before, and some mysterious transactions that I couldn't quite explain. At first, I thought maybe we'd made some big investments or she was just being overly cautious about retirement planning. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Then came the weirdest part. I was sitting at my desk, going through some old emails, and I saw an exchange between Lisa and Mark. Just a quick back and forth about discussing everything in person and keeping it private. The tone was strange, kind of flirtatious, but also professional. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe I was reading too much into a normal conversation, or so I told myself. But then I found more emails, texts, and even a few late-night calls on her phone that she tried to hide. Lisa's attitude was suddenly different too. She'd get defensive if I asked her about the finances. "It's nothing," she snapped once when I asked about the extra charges. "You're just paranoid. I handle everything." And whenever I'd try to bring up the topic of us spending more money lately, she'd roll her eyes and throw some snarky comment about how I didn't trust her. But trust wasn't the problem anymore. The evidence was piling up, and I couldn't ignore it. What really threw me off was how she started to act almost bitchy about the smallest things. She'd snap at me over dumb stuff, like I'd ask her about her weekend plans or remind her to pick up groceries, and she'd give me this look, like I was bothering her. She started wearing more revealing clothes, acting more flirtatious whenever we went out with friends. I remember one night I caught her texting someone in bed, eyes darting at her phone screen. I didn't say anything then, but I knew something was wrong. The worst part, I thought I was losing my mind. Maybe I was paranoid, maybe I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew that Lisa wasn't being honest with me. Something was off, and I had to find out what. I decided to do some digging. I stayed up late one night sneaking into her emails and her phone. And what I found? Well, that's where everything shattered. I uncovered emails, texts, even photos that made my stomach turn. It wasn't just a fling. Lisa and Mark, our financial advisor, were having a full-blown affair. They'd been sneaking around for months, probably longer. When I saw the messages, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. They were talking about meeting up, about how they couldn't keep this a secret much longer, and how good their sex was. Sex? I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I loved and trusted, was going behind my back with a guy I'd actually trusted to help us with our money. I felt like I was living in some sick nightmare. I kept staring at the screen, trying to process how Lisa could lie so easily, so convincingly. The bitchiness, the lies, the betrayal, it was all too much. I remember sitting there, staring at that screen, feeling this mixture of anger, heartbreak, and pure disbelief. It's one thing to suspect, hell, it's even worse when you catch her. I wanted to scream, to yell at her when she finally got home that night. Instead, I just sat there, shaking. I didn't sleep that night. All I could think about was how I'd been played for a fool, how the woman I loved could betray me like this. I felt stupid, betrayed, and furious. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what yet. I just knew that my life was about to change forever. The very next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My head was pounding, and all I could think about was that damn email trail. I kept going over it in my mind. Lisa, Mark, the lies. The sex, everything. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. It felt like a betrayal on every level, and I knew I couldn't just pretend it wasn't happening. I needed to confront her, but I also needed a plan. I couldn't let her see how much she'd broken me, at least not right away. I decided I'd wait until she got home from work that afternoon. I wanted her to come back, thinking everything was normal, and then I'd hit her with the truth. That way I'd have some control over the situation. But the more I waited, the more I felt like I was losing my mind. Every minute felt like an hour. I kept circling around in my head what exactly I was going to say, how I'd respond to her tears or lies. Because I knew she'd try to deny everything, maybe cry, maybe lie her way out of it. That's exactly what I was afraid of. When Lisa finally came home that evening, she looked different too. She was wearing that same smug little smile that she'd been flashing more often lately, like she knew she was in control. She walked in, threw her purse onto the table and plopped down on the couch with that attitude like she owned the place. I couldn't hold back anymore. I took a deep breath, sat her down, and laid the evidence out on the table, the emails, the texts, the transaction receipts. Her face went pale for a second, then she started to lie. "It's nothing," she said quickly, brushing her hair back. "You're overreacting. You always jump to conclusions." She tried to act like it was all a misunderstanding, like she had no idea what I was talking about. "Mark's just a trusted advisor, not a lover. You're crazy if you think otherwise." She said she'd never cheated, that it was just a business thing, that I was making a mountain out of a molehill, but I knew better. The way she was sweating and how her voice cracked told me everything I needed to know. I couldn't take her word for it. I told her I knew about the affair, about the sex, about everything. Her eyes flickered with panic for a second, then she clenched her jaw and started to get bitchy. "You don't know anything. You're just jealous because I pay attention to someone else. Mark's just a professional. I don't owe you an explanation. You're overreacting because you're insecure." Her denial was so obvious, so desperate. It made me furious that she could lie so easily, so convincingly, even as I had all this proof right in front of her face. The conversation between us turned ugly fast. I felt my blood boiling, and I could see her trying to turn it around, shifting blame, accusing me of not trusting her, of being paranoid. It was like talking to a wall. She refused to admit what she'd done, and she kept spinning her excuses. She kept saying how she was just having a little fun, how it doesn't mean anything, and that I was just being insecure as usual. I wanted to scream at her, tell her how much she hurt me, how I felt like a complete idiot for trusting her all these years. But I didn't. Instead, I just sat there, listening to her bullshit, feeling the cold weight of betrayal settle over me. By the time she stormed off to the bedroom, I was left staring at the mess she'd made. My mind was racing. I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was normal. I felt betrayed, cheated, stupid for ever trusting her. I kept thinking about how she lied so effortlessly, how she could look me in the eye and deny everything even when I had proof in my hands. And I thought about what this meant for us. Did I want to stay? Could I forgive her? Would I ever see her the same way again? That night was the worst of my life. I stayed up, drinking whiskey, trying to process everything. I kept telling myself I deserved better than this, but the pain was so deep I didn't know if I could move past it. I felt like I'd lost my partner, my friend, my wife, and maybe even a part of myself. This wasn't just about cheating. It was about trust, respect, and the fact that the woman I loved could lie so effortlessly. I realized I had a choice to make, but I wasn't ready to decide just yet. I needed more time to think, to plan. Because I knew that once I took action, everything was going to change. And honestly, I wasn't sure I was ready for that. Either, the next few days were a blur of anger, sadness, and a strange sense of numbness. I kept replaying everything in my mind, the emails, her denial, the betrayal. I couldn't look at her without feeling this knot tighten in my stomach. The worst part was knowing she lied so easily, as if the years of marriage meant nothing to her, just so she could keep her secret safe. I started to realize that the woman I thought I knew was a stranger, someone capable of such cold deception. The more I thought about it, the more I was convinced I had to do something, but I didn't want to do something reckless. I needed a plan, some way to get justice and make her pay for what she'd done. I decided to start by gathering more evidence. I couldn't trust her to be truthful, and I wasn't about to let her spin her way out of this again. I kept digging through her emails and texts when she wasn't around. I installed a keylogger on her phone, nothing illegal, just a way to monitor her activity without her knowing. That way, I could see if she was still hiding anything, still sneaking around. It was uncomfortable, feeling like I was spying on her, but I didn't see any other choice. I needed to know just how deep this thing went before I confronted her again. Meanwhile, I was trying to get my head straight. I started talking to a lawyer, thinking about my options. Divorce was on the table, but I wanted to be smart about it. I didn't want her to take everything I worked for, especially if she'd been lying about our finances all along. I also thought about confronting Mark, our financial advisor, directly. I wanted to understand what kind of manipulative bastard he was, the kind of game he was playing with my wife. The more I learned, the more I realized how calculated everything had been. Lisa had been lying to me for months, maybe longer, and Mark was right there in the middle of it. They'd been having sex, hiding it from everyone, including me. One day, I decided to visit our bank and financial institution in person. I requested copies of all our recent transactions and went through every detail with an advisor. I wanted to see if Mark had been doing anything shady with our money besides the affair. Turns out he'd been siphoning off some funds for himself, probably to keep Lisa happy or to fund their secret meetings. That was the final straw. I'd trusted him, and he'd used that trust to screw me over. My mind was racing. How many other lies were there? What else had they been hiding? That night, I sat Lisa down again. She was acting like everything was fine, like she still had a hold on me. But I was done playing nice. I told her I knew about the affair, about the money theft, about everything. Her face twisted into a mask of anger and disbelief. She tried to deny everything again, said I was crazy, that I was making it all up, that her relationship with Mark was just some stupid mistake. But I already had the proof. I just looked at her and said, "You think you can lie your way out of this? I'm done." Her bitchy attitude only made me angrier. She snapped back with that usual attitude. "You're just insecure. You're jealous. You don't understand how women love to be spoiled. You're a control freak." I wanted to punch her in the face, honestly. The way she was dismissing everything, so cavalier about blowing up our lives, it infuriated me. I'd given her everything, my trust, my love, my time, and she threw it back in my face with this smug, bitchy look. I knew then that I couldn't fix this. Not anymore. I had to think about myself, about what I deserved. I started to realize how deeply I'd been betrayed, not just by her, but by Mark too. These people, supposed professionals, had taken everything from me: my marriage, my trust, my sense of security. I felt like a complete fool. How had I missed all the signs? How had I let this happen? I kept asking myself if I should try to salvage something or just cut my losses and walk away. Honestly, my instinct was to cut her out completely. I'd never felt this kind of rage and heartbreak in my life. In the middle of all this chaos, I knew I had to keep my head clear. I started making plans, legal advice, gathering evidence, figuring out what I was going to say in court if it came to that. I knew I had to get control of the situation, to protect what was mine, to make her pay for what she'd done. Every minute I spent on this felt like a step closer to ending our marriage, or maybe even destroying it completely. But I also knew that I couldn't live like this anymore, living with the betrayal, the lies, the bitchy attitude. It was tearing me apart. I just wanted the truth out in the open, no matter how ugly it was. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I threw myself into planning, digging, and trying to stay calm, though honestly, inside I was just a mess of anger and heartbreak. I kept reviewing everything I had, every email, every text, every shady bank transaction. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that Lisa had played me for a fool, and Mark was just as bad. That bastard had been stealing from us, playing with my wife's head, and I had been blind to it all. I felt stupid and furious, and I knew I had to confront her again. But this time, I was going to do it differently. One afternoon, I decided I'd catch her off guard. I set up a hidden voice recorder. Nothing illegal. I checked and waited until she was home. I wanted her to say something incriminating, something she couldn't deny. I needed to get her to slip up, to expose herself even more. When she got home, she was her usual bitchy self, throwing her purse down and giving me that look like she knew she had me exactly where she wanted. I confronted her again, this time with the evidence in my hand. I told her I knew about the affair, the money theft, everything. Her eyes widened, then she tried to deny it again, but I played the voice recording. Her voice, caught on tape, talking about meeting Mark, about how good it feels to be with him, and how she couldn't keep this a secret anymore. Watching her face twist in shock and fury was almost satisfying. But her reaction didn't stop her. She started to get even bitchier, yelling that I was a jealous psycho, that I had no proof, that she was tired of my accusations. I kept calm, I had to. I told her I was done, that I'd had enough of her lies and manipulation. I told her I was going to see a lawyer and that I was planning to file for divorce. That's when she really went ballistic. She screamed at me, told me I was ruining everything, called me a control freak, and accused me of being insecure because I couldn't handle her freedom. Her voice was shrill, her face flushed with anger. She demanded I stop snooping, stop threatening her, but I knew I couldn't back down now. I'd already crossed the point of no return. That night I stayed awake, feeling like I'd just been punched again and again. Every time I thought about her with Mark, about how she lied to me for months, my stomach turned. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so trusting, only to get hit with this devastation. I was drowning in a mix of rage and sadness. I thought about all the years we'd spent together, all the things we'd shared, and realized that she'd thrown all of it away for a quick, meaningless affair. It was a cold realization, and it made me want to burn everything down: my marriage, her lies, her fucking attitude. But I knew I couldn't just burn everything. That wouldn't fix anything. I started making concrete plans, legal consultations, how to divide assets, what to say in court. I knew she'd fight me tooth and nail, trying to keep some of what she'd taken, trying to spin her way out of it all. That bitchiness of hers, that arrogant attitude, only fueled my determination. I'd give her nothing. I'd make sure she paid for this betrayal, whether through divorce, financial ruin, or whatever it took. I also contacted a private investigator. I wanted to see if she was still lying, still hiding things. I told him to follow her, see if she was meeting Mark again or doing anything suspicious. I didn't trust her to tell the truth anymore, and I didn't want any surprises. I needed to cover all my bases, protect myself from being blindsided. The investigator's reports confirmed what I already suspected. Lisa was still sneaking around, still seeing Mark, even after I confronted her. That made my blood boil even more. She was relentless, and I realized I had to act fast before she could dig in her heels and try to spin her way out of everything. The final straw came when I discovered she'd been draining our joint account to pay for her affairs. She'd been lying about needing money for emergencies, but instead she was funneling it all into secret meetings, gifts for Mark, trips. I was done. I didn't want to live in this lie anymore. I told her to pack her things, that I was filing for divorce and that I wanted her gone. Her bitchy look turned into pure fury. She screamed at me, said I was overreacting, that I was crazy, that I'd ruin everything. But I just looked her in the eyes and said, "You've already ruined everything, and I won't let you ruin me too. Now I'm at a crossroads. I've started the process and I know she'll fight me hard. She's already trying to manipulate the situation, throwing tantrums and lying her way out. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I do know one thing: I'll never trust her again. She's broken something inside me that I'll never get back: trust, respect, the feeling that I was safe with her. And honestly, I don't think I want to try fixing this anymore. I've learned that sometimes the only way to get justice is to walk away and start over, even if it kills me to do it. The lawyering up process was a nightmare, but I knew I had to do it. I met with a divorce attorney, laid out everything I found: her affair, the financial theft, the lies. She tried to spin her usual bullshit, claiming I was obsessing, that I was trying to control her, but I had more than enough proof now. The emails, the recordings, the bank statements. I was done playing nice. My main goal was to protect my assets and make sure she didn't walk away with a dime more than she deserved, especially after everything she'd done. While I was getting everything in order legally, I also started to prepare emotionally. I knew this wasn't just about splitting assets. It was about rebuilding my life from the ground up. I guess I'd always believed in the sanctity of marriage, that we'd face problems and work through them. But this, it was a betrayal so deep it shattered any illusions I had. I felt like the fool who'd put years into a lie, and now I had to figure out how to pick up the pieces. The pain was intense, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I finally saw her for what she really was: selfish, manipulative, and utterly callous. In the meantime, she wasn't making it easy. Lisa was still bitchy, still throwing tantrums. She threatened me, called me every name in the book, played the victim card constantly. She tried to guilt-trip me, saying I was ruining everything, that I was the one who'd broken the marriage, not her. She even accused me of being the cheater, which made me laugh bitterly. The woman had the nerve to act like I was the bad guy after she'd been sneaking around with Mark. I knew her game, and I wasn't going to fall for it. I had my evidence, my lawyer, and my resolve now. I was going through with the divorce, no matter what she did. One night I caught her sneaking out again. I followed her in my car. I didn't want her to know at first, but then she pulled into a dingy parking lot, met Mark, and they disappeared into a cheap motel. Watching her with my own eyes, I felt this sick mixture of rage and heartbreak. She was so brazen about it, like she didn't care what I thought. That's when it hit me. She'd been doing this for months, maybe longer. All those late nights, all those emergencies she kept talking about. She'd been living a double life, and I was just a fool in the dark. That night I went home and packed her things. I left a note on the bed telling her I was done, that I wanted her out of my life for good. I didn't even bother to argue anymore. I just wanted her gone so I could breathe again. The next day I hired movers and she was gone. Watching her walk out the door, I didn't feel relief, just emptiness. The house was way too quiet and the silence was deafening. I finally realized how much of my life I'd wasted on someone who didn't give a shit about me. Now I'm here, living alone, trying to piece everything back together. I've cut ties with her, cut her out of my life completely. I've started to rebuild my finances, my self-esteem, and my peace of mind. I know she's out there, probably still trying to manipulate her way back, but I won't let her. I've learned that sometimes the biggest act of self-love is walking away from someone who's betrayed you so badly. She thought she could keep playing her games, but I've finally taken control. I'm not the same man I was when I married her, and honestly, I don't want to be. Looking back, I realize I should have seen the signs sooner. I should have trusted my instincts instead of dismissing the little red flags. But I also learned that no matter how much you love someone, betrayal cuts deep. And forgiveness, sometimes it's not even an option. Right now, I just want to heal and move forward, knowing I'm better off without her. The pain will fade, but the lesson stays with me. Never ignore the warning signs, and never let anyone treat you like you're disposable. If there's one thing I can tell anyone in a similar situation, it's this: trust your gut, protect yourself, and never settle for anything less than honesty and respect. It's been a few months now since everything fell apart. Honestly, I still feel the sting of betrayal every now and then, but mostly I feel free. Free from the lies, the manipulation, and that sick feeling of being played for a fool. I won't lie, it's been one of the hardest experiences of my life, but it's also been a wake-up call. I learned the hard way that trust is something you have to earn every day, and once it's broken, it's nearly impossible to fix. The biggest lesson I've taken from all of this is that I should never ignore my gut. I had so many little red flags over the years: the bitchy attitude, the secretive phone calls, the sudden rush to spend more money. Yet I convinced myself I was overthinking everything. I thought love meant forgiving, turning a blind eye. But love isn't about accepting lies or betrayal. It's about honesty, respect, and mutual trust. Without those, everything else crumbles. I also learned that revenge isn't about destruction. It's about reclaiming your dignity. I could have gone on a rampage, exposed her secrets publicly, or done something impulsive. But instead, I channeled my anger into protecting myself legally and emotionally. I cut her out, made sure she couldn't manipulate or hurt me anymore, and focused on rebuilding my life. That was the best revenge, living well without her. Looking back, I realize I was lucky to have seen it all before she could destroy me completely. I see now how manipulative she was, how she played the victim to cover her tracks. And I see how I was blinded by love and trust, which in hindsight made me vulnerable. But I won't make that mistake again. Now I'm more cautious, more aware of what I deserve. To anyone out there going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the signs, no matter how small. And when you catch someone betraying you, don't waste time trying to fix it. Sometimes, walking away is the only way to save yourself. That pain may never fully go away, but it will fade. And someday, you'll look back and realize you're stronger for having survived it. Because at the end of the day, no matter how much it hurts, you're better off without the people who don't value you enough to be honest. I've learned that betrayal cuts deep, but it also clears the way for a fresh start. I'm finally ready to move on, to find happiness again, on my own terms. And if I've learned anything from all this, it's that self-respect and honesty are the most important things in any relationship. Without them, everything else is just noise. I'll carry this experience with me for the rest of my life, but I'll also carry a new strength I never knew I had, and that's what counts.